Welcome back to the NutriSafe podcast. Just me today. Felt like doing a little bit of like an emergency episode. Was wanting to do it earlier this week. Been super busy with college exams, all that, and it took us a while for Joey and I to be able to put this together. Talking about college football. First time we've covered it this season. First time we've been back on here in a while. Again, hard to be able to schedule something with him. No knock on him. He's deployed. But kind of just the way it is. We love him. Praying for him. Hope he stays safe over there in Arizona. But South Carolina football. And for those of you who have watched for the year and a half we've been doing this, know that from the very beginning, I have been a staunch defender of Carolina football. I will die on the hill. I've loved this program. I've given it everything for the 4 years I've been here. And ever since I was little, wearing a Marshawn Lattimore jersey. To see the fall off that has happened this season, undescribable amount of pain as a football fan. Preseason top 15, ranked as high as number 10 this year. And what I have seen unfold the last couple weeks, unbelievable. Just the product that has been put out on the field offensively is absolutely atrocious. Whether it's the offensive line, whether it's the play calling, dropped passes. I mean, there's so many things that are going wrong all over the place. And as a fan, wanting answers is perfectly reasonable. The way that it has been handled has been very subpar, in my opinion. And I feel like the fan base that has stood behind this team through thick and thin deserves a lot more than what has been given to us. And I mean, we're going to dive deeper into some of these issues here in a minute, but for us to have to sit there and watch us throw a screen on 3rd and 20 something, or try and run it up the middle from our half-inch yard line against Oklahoma after they pooch punted it and get a safety down 20 something already, 17, I think it was 24-7. So they're down 17, and we try and run it up the middle after our offensive line has blocked jack shit all day. What are we doing? I get last year we had a back who was able to power through and plow through that. Faison is nowhere close to as big as Sanders was. Why we are trying to continuously run him up the middle baffles me. We have an O-line that can't block. I know we've had injuries there. We've had to move guys around. But for the love of God, why are we going to something that's so much like a weak link in the chain of our team? Why do we continue to try and hurt ourselves in a game instead of trying to exploit the things that would help us win? Looking at Faison, you can tell how shifty and jumpy this guy is when he runs. Very good lateral quick movement side to side. Just get him outside the numbers. Get him outside the hash and let him go one-on-one with the safety or one-on-one with the cornerback. Because now he's got some size on them, coming in like, 215, 220, going up against a guy who's maybe 190 pounds. I mean, he's put on a ton of weight since he got here, but he's not going to be able to replace Sanders. And so I don't in any way pin this on him. This is more offensive play calling, but it needs to be better. The LSU game, to say that game was winnable is an understatement. The entire game, we shoot ourselves in the foot. The entire game. The first play from scrimmage for our offense. I mean, bad snap, bad transaction, fumble, set up LSU inside the 30-yard line. you're handing them 3 points. I mean, the defense is all credit to the defense. I don't know how they held LSU to 20 points. I mean, that's unbelievable in my opinion. And given the fact that LSU scored some late points in the end there, but one score game for a lot of that. Matt Fuller being able to take that 72-yard touchdown, longest run we've had all year, surprisingly, was right up the middle. But 5 pre-snap penalties against LSU, it's hard to get a first down when the only direction you're moving is backwards. It's just unbelievable. And the fact that it took that long to get rid of Lonnie Teasley also baffles me, because offensive pre-snap penalties have been atrocious and have killed us all year. Killed us in Mizzou. Can't tell you how many times we had a false start against Mizzou. We had a total of 14 penalties for 98 yards against them. Again, it's hard to move the ball down the field when all you're doing is moving back. And given LaNorris threw the ball extremely well that game. Yeah, I mean, it baffles me how we continue to try and run the ball, and you try and do all that, and then you have a quarterback who can run. Sometimes you try and run them, and then sometimes it's I don't even know how to describe it, but LaNorris threw for 300 yards. 300. I mean, that might be up there with some of the most he's thrown for a single game in his Carolina career, at least against a quality opponent. I don't know what he's doing against some of these FCS schools that we play. But you had like the 2 different times we had a free play, threw the ball downfield, amazing catches. I think Vandrevius Jacobs had one, and Nick Harbor may have had one on one of those go routes down the sideline, and catch it and get in. I mean, unbelievable. And then only lose that game by 9. I mean, as much as it hurt to lose that game and kind of feel like, yeah, this is kind of the end of our hopes for the playoff, that's probably, I think in my opinion, that's probably one of the better games we've played this season. But back to the offensive penalties, the 5 pre-snap penalties against LSU, total of 13 penalties for 65 yards. You had all the penalties against Mizzou for 98. This is one of the most penalized teams that Beamer's had under his tutelage here in Carolina. 63 yards per game. That's a lot. And with the schedule that we have coming up, I don't really think it's going to get any better. And I think this team is going to continue to fall apart. I think Beamer, I'll get into this in a minute when we talk about the Bama game this upcoming weekend, but I think we're going to get very close to a point where Beamer's going to lose the locker room. And it's going to just be these guys, they aren't going to care. I mean, they're going to go out there and it's just going to be, again, just another mid product on the field. I mean, we have 3 top 10 teams coming up. You have Bama this weekend at number 4, Ole Miss at 8 next weekend. You get a bye, and then you have to travel to Kyle Field to face the number 3 Texas A&M Aggies. I mean, it's a pretty daunting 4 weeks right there. Not to mention that you have to win at least one of those and beat Clemson on top of that to make a bowl game. So this very real chance this could end up being one of the worst seasons under Beamer. And it surprises me so much because the expectations and the feeling around this program, the entire offseason and into the start of the season, were this team could compete for a national title. This team could go and make the CFP, where they got you could say they got the short end of the stick last year, but they can go make it in this time, come in with quality wins where you would thought, hey, they might be able to compete against a team like Bama, compete against a team like Ole Miss, maybe beat A&M by double digits. And now you're thinking, Bama might hang 50 on them here this weekend at Williams-Brice. They may lose by 30 to Ole Miss. Who knows what's going to happen in the Texas A&M game? But while I don't think Beamer's on the hot seat yet. If Beamer loses to Coastal Carolina and they don't win another game this year, I think it's very real that Beamer gets let go and South Carolina's athletic director, Jeremiah Donati, decides to take a new direction with the football team. There are a lot of very good coaches available out there. We haven't really looked into it yet as the group that does the podcast. Who would be a good fit for South Carolina said the job comes open, but James Franklin. And given we will all kind of take this full circle, hopefully next week we can get Joey on. We'll see. Hopefully we can take it full circle and talk about the Penn State job opening, Florida State wanting to get rid of Norvell, Billy Napier getting let go at Florida, and kind of all these moves where these guys could go. Lane Kiffin possibly going to Florida. Rumors that he got offered $81 million over 6 years. I think that would come out to about $13.5 million a year. All of that, being able to dive deep into that, kind of give our thoughts on where people will go and what makes the most sense and the best fit for a guy like James Franklin and Billy Napier, where their next step will be. Will they go to coaching? Will it take a little bit of a break? Will we see John Gruden get back in and whatnot? So we'll get all that done hopefully next week. Might just be me again, but kind of getting back to South Carolina. Mike Shula has been, again, talked about it, the play calling has been subpar. I don't know, because we saw the same thing happen with Cam Newton in Carolina. You have a very skilled quarterback who can not only throw the ball, but can run the ball extremely well, can throw the ball on the run extremely well. Yet we see him try to contain Lenorris to the pocket. We saw him do it with Cam Newton, where he tried to contain him to the pocket. And it's not too far off to say that it kind of ruined Cam Newton's career towards the end of his time in Carolina. And so you have to wonder, is this style of offensive play calling conducive to Lenore Sellers' skill set, conducive to the offensive line skill set? Is it conducive to what we have at wide receiver? Wide receiver is probably our thinnest skill room, at least appearing to those on the outside of the program, those who don't usually watch Carolina football, don't know the names all that great. But when you look at it, that could also be our biggest strong suit. Who are they going to put the number one guy on? Oh, you put your number one cornerback on Nick Harbor? That's fine. Get Mazio Bennett for 100 yards a game. Get Vandrivius Jacobs a couple catches for some chunk plays. There's so many, I guess, options you could say for what you can do when they don't know who your number one guy is, or there is no clear front runner for wide receiver one. And I feel like we have failed to exploit that when we go and play some of these defenses. The other thing that kills me, when we line up offensively, we don't spread the defense out at all. I mean, it kills me that yet we try and run all these plays up the middle, and we just load, like the defense loads the box, we load the offensive box. Like there's no one on the outside. At least spread the defense out, make it at least look like you're going to throw it, and then run it on the outside where there's just lack of effort. There's just no bodies there. So baffles me that the play calling has been atrocious as it is. And Beamer's response to being asked whether there would be changes in offensive play calling, I think shows a lot about where the state of this Carolina program is right now. You had the student section chanting "Fire Shula" during the Oklahoma game. Fair point. Probably should be. I mean, the standard that was set last year, going 6-0 at the end of the season, falling short in the bowl game. You guys have heard my stance on bowl games before. But falling short in the bowl game was that this program can win and win at some of the highest levels. When you go out and hire a guy like Shula who had NFL experience, you would expect for him to be able to contribute to that winning at the highest level. And I think he might be the one thing holding us back the most. You look at the defense and what the defense has been able to do this year, given I thought they were going to regress a little bit from the 2024 team with losing TJ Sanders, losing Tonka, losing Kyle Kennard, Nicky Minwari, all those major players on the defense that had fantastic seasons for Carolina last year, go play in the NFL, go sign contracts and whatnot. And the holes that were left on the defense, I thought were going to be our biggest problem. I thought, if anything, we would kind of turn it into a West Coast spread offense and just try and outshoot people. To see the defense be probably our best aspect outside of special teams, with Vakari Swain's punt return so far, it's miserable. Having to sit through a noon game, getting absolutely torched by a Carolina Sun, and watch absolutely miserable Carolina football is just like, I'd rather sit there and watch us lose by 3 in heartbreaking fashion than watch us get blown out and our offense look god awful. I mean, there's no sign of life on the offense, and I hope to God that they made some sort of changes over the past week. Whether they publicly state that they changed the play calling or not, I hope they do, because we have another 3 o'clock game. No clouds are going to be in the sky this weekend. Probably going to get another sunburn watching us get beat by 45 or 50 by an Alabama team that is far superior and has things way more figured out than we did. So, but, and on to Lenorris himself. I get it being as young as he is. Everyone's telling you you have the chance to be the greatest quarterback this season. You have the chance to be one of the top overall pick. There's a ton of pressure on him. No doubt he feels that pressure, and no doubt he tries to play up to that level. And when you watch these games and you're sitting there, his ability to break tackles is unbelievable. I mean, he just slides off guys like butter. It's so, visually watching people try and tackle him is like watching a high schooler show up to a pee-wee football game and have all the kids try and tackle. It's just so hard for them to bring him down. Conversely, he figured it out a little bit against Oklahoma, but he just hasn't figured out how to throw the ball away consistently. And sometimes, again, when we saw it against LSU, when he did throw the ball away, he wasn't able to get outside the tackle box. He took 2 big intentional grounding penalties that set us back pretty bad. But you need to learn to throw it away and get it out of your hand, so we don't deal with a 2nd and 18, 3rd and 25 situation where inevitably we're going to just run it up the middle or throw a screen play and punt it away. So, last year, 195 yards per game through the air. This year he's at 162, given I think that 162 is inflated a little bit because you get a game like Missouri where he throws for 300 yards. You get a game like Kentucky where, again, let's see, I only threw for 153 against Kentucky, but led the team in rush yards with 81. Our quarterback should not be the guy leading the team in rush yards. You got to be able to protect his body a little bit. We have 2 great running backs. We have 3 great running backs. We have Oscar Attaway, Matt Fuller, and Faison. Use them. Use their strengths to our benefit, please. Now, I know someone in the South Carolina program is probably not going to end up watching this. So it's pointless to sit here and plead for some sort of help or some sort of lifeline that this program needs to throw to this fan base, because come tomorrow, offense getting booed off the field consistently last weekend is going to be a lot louder. Bama's defense isn't the best, but it's should be very, very capable of slowing down an offense that has struggled to do much of anything this year. back to Lenoris, his rushing in 2024 was 4.1 yards per carry. He was very good at getting down the field. And when he got out of a sack for 10 yards and getting a first down, this year it's just been running backwards. I mean, he's averaging 1.3 yards per carry. Talked about his inability to throw the ball away. It's stinging us in more places than one. And we're giving up 3.5 sacks a game. Some games more than others, but the 238 sack yards, I mean, that it's just, again, I can't remember what the statistic was, but I think it was like 70 or 80% of all drives where your quarterback takes a sack will not result in a touchdown. It's hard to score when we go, oh, 1st and 10 from our 25, sack, loss of 7, run up the middle, no gain, sack, loss of 8. We're on our 10-yard line now, and Mason Love's punting it from in his own end zone, and whoever we're playing is getting the ball at midfield. That's just a conservative. Yes, and that conservatively wraps up our game against Oklahoma. But third downs have also been a problem for this team. 3 of 15 against Oklahoma, 6 of 16 against LSU, 3 of 11 against Mizzou, 4 of 12 against Vandy, 3 of 12 against South Carolina State. 25% on third down against an FCS program. If Akari Swain hadn't taken those 2 punt returns back, I'm not entirely sure that we would have won that game. That's kind of sad. Now, I get that Beamer's thing since he's been here has been excelling in special teams, but us being able to win games should not require us to take a punt return back for a touchdown. Last weekend against Oklahoma, we averaged about 7.5 yards to go on third downs. Those plays on third down only averaged 2.9 yards. So again, we're not calling plays that will go and get us first downs. The runs up the middle aren't working. The screen passes aren't working. We're going nowhere. Yeah, I mean, it's showing up. Our third down percentage we're at 33% on third down. And I understand this very easily could be changed by a different play caller, different offensive coordinator, and whatnot. But you look at who Beamer has had so far in his tenure as head coach. You've had Marcus Satterfield, Dowell Loggins, and Shula. Shula's likely going to be a one and done. Loggins wasn't bad. You had him last year. He did great during the regular season, left for App State. Wish him nothing but the best. I mean, what we were able to do for the 2 years that he was here were fantastic. The first season, little less, but no. The turnaround in the second year of his offensive coordinator whatever, in his second year being in the seat for offensive coordinator, the turnaround that we had on offense, seeing what Lenoris could do, and the whole world kind of being, wow, this guy's amazing kind of thing. That was wonderful to see. And then you had Rattlers last year, they went 5-7 with a disappointing loss against Clemson. But at what point does the blame start to fall to Beamer's feet? Each of the past 3 or 4 seasons, we've had something where we can be like, okay, here's what went wrong, and here's who we can blame. But at what point do we just stop making excuses? Like, at what point does it become Shane Beamer's fault? Last year, you could make a very good argument that you got screwed out of the game against LSU because of the refs. That was a bad call against Kyle Kennard. I think Garrett Nussmeier flopped the shit out of that. still hate him to this day for it. And for those of you that are like, oh, hate's a strong word. No, I very much do not like Garrett Nussmeier. I don't wish ill will towards him. I don't like him. But he needs to at some point be responsible for how disciplined this team is. His hires haven't been the greatest, and I get we've lost very quality coordinators to head coaching jobs. Pete Lembo going to Buffalo, fantastic special teams coordinator, blocking punts, returning kickoffs for touchdowns, blocking field goals. All of that was fantastic. But at what point do we need to go and be like, what? At what point do we need to be like, yeah, it's fair to say that you are now on the hot seat or your seat's getting warm? Because within the program, people, I don't want to say within the program, within the fan base, I would say it is starting to become more and more apparent that people are willing to get off the Shane train. I'm not fully there yet. I will say I'm like 1 foot off, 1 foot in. I don't want to see him let go after this season. But if he continues to have the mindset of I made a change last week and not want to change things moving forward, then I think Jeremiah Donati, the board of directors, and those in charge, or I guess the powers that be here at South Carolina, need to look at making a change. Because you look at all of the other athletic programs we have right here in South Carolina, they're doing fantastic. Sports teams here, I mean, women's basketball perennially competes for the national championship. Baseball should be very good this year. I get that last year they were way below expectations, but I think Maneri was like, I didn't realize how much better the league had gotten, has gone out and got one of the top transfer classes in college baseball. And I believe the Cox will be right back in there competing with some of the best for the College World Series. The equestrian team, I don't want to say that not that no one cares about it, but not really a major sport collegiately. It's like one of the number 2 or number 1 team in the country. Like that's unbelievable. Like, and just the list keeps on going down and down for how many of these teams we have here are some of the best in the country. And then we get to football, ranked 13 at the start of the season, got up to 10 after the win against Virginia Tech. And to see the fall off that has taken place, and like you look at Columbia, football means everything here. This program means so much to not only the city of Columbia, but the entire, for all the Gamecocks in the state of South Carolina and beyond. That football team means so much to everyone. And to see, I don't want to say the lack of effort, but I don't really have words for it. But to see how they want answers. They want something to change because clearly something's not working, and the coaching staff is not willing to make a change. So if I'm in that program there, I would not be surprised if people's heads are starting to get called for. Not literally, but metaphorically. People's jobs are going to start getting called for. Shane Beamer's seat, if they lose by a massive margin this week, given I think everyone here is expecting to lose on Saturday, but give us something to root for. No one wants to watch us get shut out on Saturday. That stadium's going to be empty at halftime if that's the case. But we'll leave it at that. There'll probably be a part 2 to this rant. Didn't realize it was going to take that long. But yeah. So since we haven't really covered college football this year, we wanted to talk about the top 4 teams in the country right now. Why? And this is what Joey and I spent a good majority of our time this week doing, trying to put together stats and reasons why we think these teams will either win the national title or what we think will cause them, like their Achilles heel on what will happen to them and why we think they could lose and not win. So obviously, right now, we got Ohio State #1 in the country. And I was talking with Joey the other day. I think it was last night. And you saw, I can't remember if it was one of the Barstool podcasts. And Brandon Walker was talking about how much more fun it is to watch your team just blow out everyone and cover the spread, cover a 28.5 point spread every single week. And I was talking with Joey, and I was like, because we don't agree with Brandon Walker consistently. In fact, it's most of the time we will usually be on the other side of what he's arguing. But I found myself agreeing. If I got to watch South Carolina cover a 28.5 point spread every weekend right there down the road, I would be ecstatic. I would not have. I wouldn't find it boring. I wouldn't get tired of it because of the. I say this knowing that other Carolina fans experienced far more pain during the 2010 Spurrier years. Those early 2010s, having such quality teams but coming up short every single time. It would be so much more fun to consistently see that and then kind of be able to walk your way into a CFP, walk your way into a conference title game, and just be there. So with that, Ohio State has the #1 defense in the country. They're top 10 in almost every statistical category. They've only given up 5.9 points per game. And let's see, they've shut out 2 people, but have held 4 teams who have scored under 10 points. Only other time they've given up more than 10 points was at Illinois. So impressive season so far. They're also only averaging giving up 213 yards per game against, which again is also impressive. Haven't played the most skilled offenses. They did play Texas to start the season when Texas was ranked #1. They played Washington, who a little shaky lately. And then Illinois, obviously, again, not the worst, but they've also started to fall off. But Ohio State has playmakers all over the offensive side of the ball. Carnell Tate and Jeremiah Smith having great seasons so far. And when you look at it, they returned 9 starters from the national title team last year. Experience is going to be a big factor when it comes to later in the season, and you've got some of these big games. You're facing some of the other top teams in the country. You want guys who've been there before and know how to handle themselves when the stress and the pressure is really, really up there. And Ryan Day has finally gotten that national title and being able to be one of the 3 active head coaches with a title. And so when you have a coach who's been there, when you have a bunch of your starters who've been there, 6 of which are on the offensive side of the ball, who have won a title, then you can feel a little bit more comfortable that when you go into a big game, you're like, hey, we've been here before. We've won before. We know what we're doing. We know how to get to the top of that mountain again. All we got to do now is just go out and execute, and we'll be fine. And so jumping on that, the rest of the way for the rest of the season, I mean, they play Penn State at home this weekend, but then outside of that, they don't play anyone big until the Michigan game. And this might finally be the year that they get Michigan. It's been a tough stretch for them lately. But when I watch Michigan football, I personally think Bryce Underwood should transfer. I don't think he will. The money's too good there. But I think, to me, I don't think the coaching staff at Michigan will be able to develop him into the best quarterback that he can be. And he may be foregoing a lot better money in the NFL in 3-4 years instead of giving up the money at Michigan now. Personal preference, I don't know if the rest of the guys would support that, but some of the things Ohio State has struggled with, consistency on offense, while it has been pretty decent, they've struggled to put together a complete game with both rushing and passing kind of going up. This is from Joey, but they've had games where they'll throw for just an insane amount of yards, but the rushing won't necessarily be there. And they've had games where they've had to rely heavily on rushing, but not necessarily passing. And that may be in part due to the youngness of Julian Sayin. He has, I think, the ceiling for Sayin is very, very high, but he's very inexperienced. And one of the big things I think that might cost them would be inexperience. You have the young quarterback and a young defense who have yet to play in some of the most hostile environments in college football. I think that you will have to play in a hostile environment. Michigan for sure will be a hostile environment, but in the college football playoff, given I think once by the time they get to some of the big games, it's not going to be super hostile, but you might run into some rowdy crowds there on the way to a national title game. So best win, obviously knocking off number 1 Texas at home 14-7. They only had 203 yards of offense. Texas had 336 with the young Arch Manning, and they were only 3 of 12 on third down. So I don't know how it will be when they start playing better and better teams. Will their third down percentage hold up? That goes. I think A&M is the other team that we're going to talk about that has struggled a little bit with third downs and they can't necessarily score. Is there a little bit of correlation there? Maybe. They also beat Illinois on the road, a +3 turnover margin, and then being 8 of 15 on third down there. So, given might be able to score more if your third down percentage is a little bit better. Offensively, ranked 23 coming in, or they have the number 23 scoring offense with 36.4 points per game and 431 yards per game. And then obviously best defense in the country, giving up only 5.86 points per game out of the 5.9 I mentioned earlier, and averaging only 213 yards per game. So Ohio State, I think right now is the clear favorite to win the title. It'll be very interesting to see what they do kind of in the playoff. They aren't as battle tested as some of the other top 10 teams in the country who have just had gauntlets. Bama's beaten 4 straight ranked teams. So we'll see what they do there, especially coming off a big win in at home against Tennessee. On to Indiana, though. Fernando Mendoza, absolute dog. Currently favored to win the Heisman. I believe I was looking at it last night. I think he's +320. So you want to go sprinkle a little bit of change on that, but has a 73.5% completion percentage. He's thrown for 1,700 yards, over 1,700 yards already this season, and has 21 touchdowns and 2 picks with a 9.7 yards per pass, yards per completion, I think is the correct term for that. And so the way he's just been able to just dice up defenses and talk about explosive offenses, Indiana's one of the top, I think, number 4 scoring offense. I think North Texas is number 1, which surprised me a little bit to see them that high up there. With some of the teams they've played have been more ball hogging. So we'll see what that amounts to, but very much a two-headed monster when it comes to how their offense works. Mendoza will smoke you through the air, will throw for just an insane amount. And then you got a rushing attack that's averaging 226 yards per game on the ground with 2 players that are already both over 400 yards. And their average margin of victory is over 32 points. And now you're saying, oh, hey, they played a couple of FCS teams. They've got some nobodies on schedule. They're averaging beating Big Ten opponents by over 3 touchdowns. It's still unbelievable how many points this offense is putting up and the competition they've had. They went into Alton in Oregon and won. Let's see. beat number 9 Illinois at home, and went on the road, beat Iowa in close fashion. That's always a close game just because of Iowa's offensive tendencies. But I think if they aren't going to win, the big thing, same thing with Ohio State, their strength of schedule, they aren't as tested. And the rest of the way, they don't have anyone who is mildly good on their schedule. The only team with a winning record they play, as of today, the only team left that they play with a winning record is Maryland, whose only 3 losses have come in the last 3 weeks. So everyone they play either has a losing record or is just ice cold right now. This isn't something they really struggle with currently, but will the offense continue to perform at the highest level when they play some of the top teams in the country? You look at like an Ohio State and Alabama. Texas A&M's defense is up there, but actually I think more mid. We'll get to that here in a second. Yeah, A&M's defense is 61 in the country, so I'm not going to include them on that list. But when they play some of the top teams in the country, will their offense still be able to perform at the rate it is when they play? Because their Big Ten schedule isn't necessarily the hardest. You get Illinois, Iowa, Oregon. You play at Penn State, but Penn State is, again, we'll talk about this when we talk about the job openings and whatnot next week, but letting go James Franklin a little too soon. But I don't know how they will perform when they face top-notch opponents. I do think there's a very real chance they go undefeated. In Indiana, Ohio State, Big Ten championship is looking ever so likely. But you look at it, they were 6 of 15 on third down against Iowa and 5 of 14 on third down against Oregon, both of which they scored 30 or 20 and 30 points respectively. So it'll be interesting to see, if they go play Ohio State, who has the number 1 defense in the country, it'll be very interesting to see, are they going to go 3 of 14 or 5 of 10, not 5 of 10, 5 of maybe 13, 5 of 12 on third down and struggle to be able to extend drives and put points on the board. Given I think Indiana's probably the most well-rounded team on this list, they have the best, they have the number 4 offense in the country, averaging 43 points, almost 44 points per game, in almost 500 yards per game, and a top 4 defense, only giving up just 11.5 points per game and 248 yards per game on defense, whereas Ohio State has the number 23 offense in the country and the number 1 defense. You look at A&M with the 27 offense and then the 61st ranked defense, and Bama's 22 defense and 33 offense. So Indiana's probably the most well-rounded team on this list, but could you attribute that to lack of, I guess, equal competition? Possibly. They've still been able to beat a top 3 team in Oregon on the road, beat a top 9 team in Illinois, given Illinois is not a top 10 team still. I can't remember where our rankings will be posted later today. Make sure you follow on Instagram. Go out and show some love there. But haven't looked at where we put Illinois, but I think it was 20s, if not, they dropped out. Nonetheless, on to the 2 SEC teams. Number 3, Texas A&M. In my opinion, they might be the most overrated team on this list. When I look at them, you look at their schedule. Like if you were to pull up ESPN, like the Texas A&M homepage, which I have open over here right now, you would be like, okay, they beat UTSA, they beat Utah State, both by 18 and 22 points respectively. Then they go on the road to Notre Dame. Notre Dame is the only ranked team they've beaten so far. They beat them by 1, last-second comeback. Fantastic game. Then they go to Auburn, and you would have thought that game would have been a little bit more high scoring than it was. A&M has very much a West Coast style kind of score the ball offense, in my opinion, just watching them. But you have Marcel Reed, who's averaging over 250 yards per game passing. He is very much a dual threat quarterback. Will tuck the ball and run if he needs to. And he's again similar to Mendoza. He's averaging 8.9 yards per attempt or per completion. And they in the offseason, I think last year one of their big challenges was the receiving core. Whether it was drops in crucial games like the game against Auburn at Jordan Hare, the was it double or quadruple OT, the drop there, not being able to get open, injuries and whatnot. So they picked up Mario Craver and Casey Concepcion in the transfer portal. Their Craver's averaging 18.7 yards per reception. Concepcion is 15.2. So there's a lot of big play potential down the field through the air for them. And they have one of the best teams when it comes to, I think it was top 3. They might be number 4 in the SEC when it comes to chunk plays in passing. So that's a passing play of over 20 yards. So a threat to get downfield. Now, they've played a lot of like the mid-tier teams in the SEC. They haven't really played anyone up top. And I don't really think they will. They play LSU, who I think is very overrated. South Carolina had a chance to beat them. Ole Miss did beat them. It'll be very interesting to see how the rest of LSU season plays out. Wouldn't be surprised if Brian Kelly's let go. But they play Missouri and then Texas, and obviously they have South Carolina coming in early November. But their running backs have also been able to kind of get the wheels churning there. Le'Veon Moss is out for an undisclosed amount of time, though, so they've had to turn to Reuben Owens. But combined, the two have 785 total yards with 9 touchdowns. So injuries are a big thing for Texas A&M right now. I think they had 4 guys who were originally starting who are down. I think 1 is out for the season and 3 are out for undisclosed amount of time. But the other thing they struggle with is third downs. And when they start facing some of the stiffer competition, if they look to try and make it into the college football playoff, which as of right now, it looks like they could. But I mean, I can also see they're going into Death Valley tomorrow night. You're going to Missouri, and you're going to Texas. The last 3 ranked teams they have are all on the road. Very real that they end up losing all 3 of those games. And I think the big reason why is third downs. 5 of 11 on third down against Arkansas, 9 of 17 against Florida, 3 of 14 against Auburn. They're 39% on the season, which is the lowest out of the top 4 teams by at least 10%. And when you look at teams like Ohio State's averaging, or they're 52% on third down on the season. Indiana's 54%, and Bama's 49%. So they're at 1 out of every 2 times, pretty much, they're converting on third down. Whereas A&M's here, 4 out of every 10, they're getting it done. I just think that when they play stiffer competition, I mean, Auburn I don't think is a bad team, but I think A&M should have won by more. But when you look at it, it's like going 3 of 14 against probably the best defensive team they've played. Florida is also up there for a better defensive team they've played. 3 of 14 and 9 of 17. 9 of 17 against Florida is obviously far better. But that 3 of 14 number against Auburn, if I'm an A&M fan, that number really scares me. Because that's saying, hey, a team like Ohio State, who's the best team in the country, I think they also have one of the best defensive third down, I guess, stop rates. You play a team like that, and you aren't able to extend drives. You aren't able to get the ball down the field. Ohio State's got an explosive offense enough to be able to go, and you might lose by 30. Losing by 30 in the college football playoff is not a recipe for success. One could argue, look at Tennessee this season after last year. Yeah, and you could attribute that to other factors. I'm not saying there's a correlation there, but who knows? Happens twice, might be a little bit more, or 2 or 3 times might be a little bit more than a coincidence. But defensively, they're pretty good on third down, holding opponents to only 23% conversion rate. So have something to hang their hat on. They have a very good defense, at least third down wise. Scoring wise, not the greatest, but their turnovers relative to the other teams around them. So I'm comparing them to within the top 4. You've got the Ohio State, Indiana, Bama. Ohio State has a turnover margin of 9, plus 9. Indiana 7, Ohio State's 5. Ohio State's number is a little low, but they've been able to kind of make up for it with not turning the ball over as much. Bama's just been a turnover factory on defense. And A&M comes in at plus 1. I would say the third down percentage is a little bit more scary to me, but the turnover rate is also, I guess, or turnover margin also, I guess, is a little bit of a red flag for me. I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, hey, if our defense can't generate turnovers, if our defense, if we need a stop, can we rely on them to get it done? Because right now they're getting scored on pretty, I don't want to say pretty easily, but you only beat Arkansas by 3. You gave up 42 points to Arkansas. You gave up 40 points to Notre Dame. And then you look at the first 2 games of the season. I get it's the first 2 games of the season, but I don't think you should be giving up 24 points to UTSA. You shouldn't be giving up 22 points to Utah State as, I guess, one of the top-notch premier SEC teams. Like, that's a little too much on the offensive side of the ball. I guess West Coast style need to pick it up on defense. But out of the 4 teams, I think A&M is the most overrated. I think they will be, if I was to pick a team to say, oh, they aren't going to make the playoff, it would be A&M. Given they go out and make me eat my words, go into LSU tomorrow night and just smoke the Tigers, smoke Missouri, smoke Carolina, and smoke Texas, and just waltz their way in, might be able to get up to a number 1 or 2 or number 2 ranking by then. I don't think they'll beat out Ohio State, especially if Ohio State wins the Big Ten. I think Ohio State will be able to keep that number 1 spot. But on to the Crimson Tide. They're extremely battle tested already this season. Again, their last 4 games: number 11 Tennessee, 14 Missouri, 16 Vanderbilt, and on the road at 5 Georgia. And the lowest they scored was 24 points at Georgia. I get that they didn't. I don't think if I remember correctly, they didn't score in the second half, which again, a little concerning, especially knowing that Georgia's defense isn't as good as it previously was. You look back at when they had Jalen Carter and some of those other dominant guys that are pretty much just all on the Eagles now. Their defense isn't all of that. And so when I see, hey, you didn't score any points on Georgia in the second half, a little concerning, but they put up 30 against Vanderbilt at home, 27 against Missouri on the road, and then really walloped Tennessee at home. But they have 4 ranked wins so far this season. They still have a little bit left to get through. I think out of everyone on the list, I think they're by far the most battle tested. I have probably the most confidence from what we've seen so far, especially from Ty Simpson. Kid's an absolute dog. He's right there. I think he's number 2 in the Heisman odds race. Over 1,900 yards this season, 18 touchdowns, and only 1 interception. That 1 interception coming against Vanderbilt. But and he has a 70% completion percentage. So being able to throw extremely accurately with a high volume, like 29 attempts against Wisconsin, 38 attempts against Georgia, 31 both against Vanderbilt and Mizzou, and then 29 against Tennessee. Yeah, and then Vanderbilt and Mizzou both having a 74% completion percentage. I believe. Oh, it's not the best. He had over an 80% completion percentage against Wisconsin, throwing for 380 yards, 4 touchdowns, no picks, but taking a sack. I think one of the big things, you look at Vanderbilt and the Missouri game. Those 2 games, they gave up a combined 8 sacks, 4 each. That might be a problem this weekend. Looking at South Carolina's defensive line, they haven't been able to generate the most sacks, but they have been very good at getting to the quarterback. And so, if I was not saying I would, if I was to place money on him throwing a pick this weekend, it might be this weekend. If South Carolina is able to get pressure, I have a lot of confidence that Brandon Cisse and the Kilgore brothers on the back end of that South Carolina defense might be able to get a pick. Which I think there's 2 ways the game this weekend can go. I think if it's a super close game, I think South Carolina is going to pull it out. I don't think that. I think this South Carolina team has a lot of potential. I don't know if that's me blindly having faith in this team. I think this game is going to either be super close and South Carolina will pull out a win, or Bama's going to go in there, score 63 points, beat us by 50, and just walk on out. So my quick thoughts on that. And then obviously I have a top 12 passing team in the country. So they've been very good on the offensive side of the ball. Defensive side of the ball, they've been okay. These games have been a little bit closer. And you look at the Florida State game at the start of the year, I think unable to get a stop defensively. 5 to 12 on third down for the Seminoles. The offense wasn't really great on third down either. But yeah, and you look at that. I think that if Alabama had beaten Florida State, they'd be the number 1 team in the country. They have the best resume out of anyone, and main reason I think they lost to Florida State. You look at that team last year for Florida State, absolutely dejected, absolutely just awful. And so, how are you supposed to pull film tape from a team that was as bad as they were last year? And okay, you're like, oh, hey, go look at Tommy Castellano's film tape from Boston College. He got benched like 4 or 5 games in the season, was not having a great time there. Boston College did not do great last year. So I think Florida State, with the atmosphere they have there, game day going in there, Lee Corso's final college game day, I think there's a little bit of college football magic going on there. And the Seminoles are able to get it done. On the flip side, Bama has struggled with big plays defensively. They're getting gashed on the ground. They're ranked 105 in the country in opponents' yards per rush. And while they have one of the best passing offenses, the running game has struggled a little bit. Jam Miller, he only has 282 yards on the season, averaging 4 yards per carry, and his longest rush is 22 yards. They're averaging, as a team, 125 yards per game, which has them roughly in the 90s. It's hard to count on the ESPN website, but so I think the big thing, if you're going to go win the national title this year, if you're the Crimson Tide, yeah, it'd be huge for DeBoer to win the title, but I think you've got to become a more well-rounded offense. You don't want to just rely on the passing game, because if you come in and you play a team like Indiana or Ohio State, who have better defenses than I think people give them, I guess you can't. Ohio State gets a lot of credit for their defense, but Indiana having a better defense than a lot of people give them credit for, being able to hold Illinois, who I think is a very pass-heavy offense, to 160 yards of offense, then you might be a little panicked if you're Alabama, being like, hey, our main thing is passing. If we can't do that, what are we going to turn to? So I think it's very important over these next couple of games for the Crimson Tide to get Jam Miller going, and for them to kind of focus on, they don't want to look ahead to the playoffs, but be like, hey, what are our weaknesses right now? And let's try and work on those a little bit subtly so that we can be like, hey, we're not going to go out and force it and try and be like, we're going to establish the run early and end up like Ohio State against Michigan last year, where they spent the entire game trying to establish the run and time just ran out. And they had pretty much no points on the board. Whereas if they just threw the ball and just accepted the fact, hey, if we're going to win this game, we're going to have to throw the ball, then. But their best win for their resume coming in, obviously, I think it'd be the number 5 win at Georgia. Again, there's things that they can take away from that game. The offense in the second half needs help, but 397 yards of offense, and 13 of 19 on third down, and held UGA to 2 of 8 on third down. That's huge. Being able to get your defense off the field and offense back on the field. They have the number 33 offense in the country, coming in with 35 points per game and 422 yards per game. And the defense with 22 ranked defense with 17.7 points per game against, and averaging giving up 309 yards per game. All in all, I don't want to be bland. I think Bama has the best road to the title. I think they will be the most battle tested. They will have the most in-season experience. They'll be like, hey, we've been in these close games before this season. They beat, let's see, going down the list, they've got 2 one-score games on here out of their last 4 or 5. It doesn't get any better when you go below that, but they've done fairly good against some of these close or decent teams. Now Joe would sit here and say, "Oh, how good is that Vandy win? Actually, how good is that Missouri win?" SEC schedule is overinflated. Don't have to listen to that today. Fortunately, I know he's going to come back and watch the episode after the fact, and I'll get that text, and he'll be like, "Oh, hey, what's this?" So, Joey, I hope you're listening later. Little nut there for you, but yep, massive games this weekend. I guess we can go over some of the big games. We have a little bit of time left. Let's see. Missouri Vanderbilt. I know there was a lot of talk about game day going to an SEC team for the 5th time. Joey and I talked about this briefly earlier this week with the possibility of, because our game of the week, I believe we did Vanderbilt, Missouri. Again, for those of you guys who are on Instagram, you guys will see like a dozen posts come out from us later today. It's Friday, so I don't have any schoolwork due tonight, fortunately. World Series starts tonight, but we'll be watching that later on. But I believe we had Vanderbilt, Missouri for game of the week. But ESPN bought exclusive rights to the SEC. So you would think that a show ran by ESPN in College Game Day would go and promote something that they spent a ton of money on. Now, should Game Day go and see the Battle of the Dakotas for North Dakota State and South Dakota State? I think that would be awesome. Is that the best football game this weekend? No. Is the environment in Nashville going to be crazy? Yes. But I think it's cool to go and see different parts of the country every once in a while. Obviously, Game Day has been to Columbus. They've been to a couple Big Ten teams this year. They were there for the Oregon Penn State whiteout, which, again, fantastic atmosphere. But when you look at it and you're going to sit there and complain and be like, oh, ESPN is going to way too much SEC teams and it's just becoming like an SEC Game Day kind of thing, you have to look at it from a business perspective. And I'm not saying, oh, I enjoy just seeing SEC teams on there. I am a little bit of an SEC elitist. hand up for accountability there. But if you spent as much money as they did, you would want to promote that product as much as possible so you get more viewers, you get more money out of it and everything. So I see where ESPN's coming from, but I thought it would have been cool for them to go and see or go and do game day at a place where 9 times out of 10, actually probably 10 times out of 10, they wouldn't go to. But yeah, just my thoughts on it. Thank you guys for tuning in, listening to me rant for an hour about South Carolina football, and then talk about some of the top 4 teams in the country, why we think they could win, what we think could go wrong for them towards the end of the season. We love you. We appreciate you. We hope to see you next week. Have fun watching football this weekend.